It was really scary.
You kept jumping off the couch.
Yeah.
And running into your room and changing your underwear.
Yeah. How old was I? Like 14?
No, 22.
Yeah,
No.
22.
I don't know. Well, how old are you? Like 4?
4? Yeah,
5?
something like that right in there.
You probably shouldn't have been watching it.
No, I shouldn't have been. I still have nightmares about it.
Yeah, well, parenting at its finest. We'll see.
All right, well, I appreciate it.
All right, sounds good.
All right, thank you, Mom. Have a good rest of your day.
Yep, you too. Bye.
You know, pretty epic. So yeah, the imagination, time travel, it's incredible. Imagination drives innovation and encourages people to do and strive to do things, to build things never before seen. Look at the Wright brothers innovating flight, the Apollo 11 mission, only 66 years after flight. I mean, it's amazing. So if it's possible, it's gonna happen eventually. And theoretically, if it happens eventually, it happens now, because that's how time travel works. You can just kind of go throughout time. So if it ever happens in the future, feasibly it happens, but there's the multiple world. It's confusing. There's a lot of moving parts. Is it possible that technology will eventually advance to the point that we have a machine like John Titor claimed to carry him through time? Who the f knows? But there are also claims that
but
maybe
if it
it's
actually
possible to
is
accidentally fall through the cracks
cell
of
phone,
time.
then
Like I
could
was
he even
saying
use
earlier.
it?
In scattered pockets
Like,
across our world, the ironclad
not like you
laws of
have
time
satellites
reportedly
in
bend
the
and
sky,
break. These are
or
places
cell
where yesterday
towers,
bleeds into
or
today, and where
any type
witnesses
of
stumble
data
through
plan
invisible doorways into the past.
for
There are temporal hotspots that share disturbing patterns that
the
suggest
fucking
time
cell
itself
phone.
may be far more fragile and manipulatable
So
than
even if
we
they
believe
did,
currently.
like,
Than we know currently. We talked
time
about thin
travel
places
with
in
their
our
cell
Appalachian
phone,
cryptid
would it
videos,
even work?
and I feel like these two things are shoulder to shoulder, brother to brother. They're adjacent from one another. Weird stuff happens. Weird, unexplainable, undocumentable things definitely happen and have happened for a long time. But for the sake of today's video, on a sunny Saturday afternoon, July 1996, just 1 month before I was born, a retired Merseyside police officer named Frank crossed an invisible threshold that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Walking down Bold Street in Liverpool to meet his wife Carol at Dylan's bookshop, he passed the neoclassical columns of the Lyceum and entered what he described as an oasis of quietness, as if someone had thrown a switch and muted the entire world. Suddenly, a 1950s box van with Kaplan's painted on its side nearly struck him. It was honking frantically as it swerved, trying to avoid hitting the man. The pedestrianized shopping street had transformed into a busy road filled with vintage vehicles, and Dylan's bookshop had vanished, replaced by Cripps, a woman's clothing store displaying handbags and shoes in its window. Everyone around him wore period-accurate clothing based on what he was seeing for the vehicles. Women were in headscarves and pillbox hats, men in trilbies and long overcoats. Nary a shaved nutsack nor a bald kitty in view. Only one person stood out, a young woman in modern clothes. They would both enter Cripps, and upon entering Frank, our police officer would observe Cripps transform back into Dylan's bookshop. What in the On the Liverpool Then and Now Facebook page, there's a post with pictures of the outside of the building when it was Cripps, and in 2022 where it was vacant, and locals in the replies seem to indicate that Dylan's wasn't there, but rather further down, and Cripps became a place called Waterstones. So whatever happened to Frank is difficult to explain. He was accurate in describing the businesses during his brief trip to the past. Cripps was indeed a woman's shop built in 1848, and even Kaplan's had been a real but seemingly defunct for decades business by 1996 when this happened to him. So there's a bizarre level of fact in regard to the story. But Frank's experience is not a singular one. 10 years later, 19-year-old Sean, a criminal known to police for various petty thefts, had been fleeing security after shoplifting in Liverpool's city center, when suddenly he began to feel tightness in his chest after ducking into Brooks Alley. When he emerged from the alley, Hanover Street had transformed. Cars from the 1960s cruised past, people wearing once again period clothing. He walked to a newspaper stand next to the central station, and the date on the front page said that it was Thursday, May 18th, 1967. The story was reportedly corroborated by the security guard who saw Sean vanish, but it is a story that leaves some similar to Frank's. Given the lack of last names provided for those who experience these things, it makes it impossible to genuinely confirm. We just have Frank and Sean. So, There's plenty of Franks and Sean. Who these people, I don't even know. But there's many alleged experiences like this of people slipping through time. And there are especially many in Liverpool. A student named Jane supposedly found herself in what she thought was a Victorian film set after walking down Bold Street with carriages pulled by horses and men in period correct clothing, in an experience that lasted about a minute, so she transported back into the Victorian era, which is crazy. A teenager named Imogene allegedly slipped into the 50s or 60s while shopping for a gift for her sister, only realizing when she tried to check out with a credit card that she was given a weird look, surrounded by people in odd clothing in a shop with prices way too low to be real by today's standards. Tell you what, you go about 35 minutes west of Yellow Springs, West Virginia, they don't use credit cards either. Just saying. On top of all of this, time slips are something that are seemingly documented even back to the very beginning of the 1900s, perhaps inspiring later stories and hoaxes, or potentially showing that it is not so far-fetched as one may believe, and it's something that's happened throughout history. For example, we have the story of two academic women, Charlotte Ann Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, who apparently traveled back in time while on the grounds at the Palace of Versailles during a trip to France. Charlotte was the principal at St. Hugh's College in Oxford, and Jourdain served as her deputy and would later become principal herself. And the two were trying to navigate the grounds after taking a brief tour and opted to take a detour after finding the entrance to the gardens closed. They got lost and tried going down an alley where everything suddenly changed. They both experienced dreariness and disorientation with the world itself feeling and becoming odd. The quote is, "Everything suddenly looked unnatural, therefore unpleasant. Even the trees seemed to become flat and lifeless, like wood worked into tapestry. There were no effects of light and shade, and no wind stirred the trees. For fellow game devs out there, that bitch switched to unlit." So, they saw people wearing clothes from the late 1700s and supposedly even a man whose face was marked by smallpox. They believed that they traveled back to the period right before the French Revolution, which shattered the monarchy in that time, and these folks wrote a book about it called An Adventure. It's far-fetched, obviously, but billions of people around the world believe in the paranormal and supernatural and believe in, Sky Daddy or whatever the people believe in. And there's so many things that people believe in that are just mind-boggling. Demons, spirits, all these things are impossible to prove scientifically, but it's still believable, and having faith in these things helps people and can be objectively good or can be objectively bad. So something like this, I don't know. What's my point? Comment down below. What we do know that's real is that some phenomena we still cannot explain, such as quantum entanglement. Anything in the quantum nature is just not even touched, and there are so many things that are happening or being discovered that could potentially reveal that some of these paranormal or supernatural things are real or misinterpreted things that are purely natural. I don't know. I'm not a smart person. There's a lot of strangeness, though. Non-living molecules can become self-replicating organisms. Abiogenesis. I mean, there's some bizarre shit out there. So perhaps time travel is real, or perhaps time travel is yet another mystery that we just have yet to solve. There are places where things get a bit weird, we know that. Appalachian area, Sedona, Arizona, both known for their bizarre energy and strange, apparently Liverpool as well. I'm gonna say if time travel ever does become real, we're probably all because there's gonna be a mass exodus from the present, and then just reality itself will come apart at the seams. They better save it for just the rich people, because us poors, we won't know what to do. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Go to sour.gg, go to gump.club to watch uncensored versions of these videos, get some behind the scenes stuff, and watch my podcast with Brandon Buckingham, The Too Late Show. We're back in business, babies.
Yes, baby.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate you.
Hold on, let me go get the door for you.
Not the flatbread, but the people for the ethical treatment of animals have been in the news a lot over the since I was a child.
Please don't take my cheese away. Please don't take my cheese! My cheese!
And by the way, I haven't seen that many good things. I grew up taking animals to the FFA at 4-H. I had a bunch of show animals that were my slaves, that I literally enslaved like Pal World in real life. And I would walk them around with a halter in front of a bunch of people, and they would go, "Give me that," and they would bet on them and stuff, and then they'd buy them from me, give me the money. I would profit greatly. For example, I bought my first Xbox 360 from selling a cow that I raised myself. And then I ate his corpse or what was left of it. So PETA's not really something that I have a lot of sympathy for inherently, but as an adult man who's trying to learn, I want to do a little bit of research. So today we're going to be talking about the cult of Peter Griffin. PETA.
No, PETA, the organization.
Just by judging its name seems like a good operation, full of good people for the ethical treatment of animals. Makes sense, of course. Everyone wants anything that's living to be treated with respect and be treated in an ethical manner as to not cut corners and hurt anything, murder anything, unless it deserves to be murdered. PETA is just a bunch of people that want animals to be treated correctly.
Hello, the internet. Today we're going to make a vegan version of a turducken, or as it's also known, a tofuckin.
I can get behind that, and so can you, Chumley, goofy sub-character from Pawn Stars.
I can listen to you talk all day.
As an owner of 2 pets that I love immensely and a 3rd that I don't love as much, I'd love it if every single animal in the world was treated the same way that I treat my beautiful companion creatures. Let's play Roblox. By the way, that's not real. That's not a real video. Right? A lot of people think that that's real, that I threw Franken beans, but no, it's actually edited. All right, I'm not a piece of shit. Animals, for example, are not ours to experiment on. We are just human beings. They are not for use for our technological advancement. We shouldn't be putting makeup on monkeys. Am I right, guys? This seems to be the main point behind PETA's message and what they are desiring to achieve. For example, you can report cruelty to animals on their website, the very front page. All great things aside from not ours to eat and wear, because I like wearing, I wear boots every day that are, I mean, I'm wearing them right now. They're not boots, but these are leather. And also I love eating meat. Just like I love eating all kinds of meat. Other than that, I agree wholeheartedly with PETA's message. I think, at least. So PETA takes the sort of essence of the idea that humans should not be in charge of the animal kingdom, and they push that agenda. They create an agenda and then push that onto people who think differently. It's kind of a political movement in a way. It isn't really that friendly. It's not, it's sort of militant in a sense.
What the fuck?
The people who make up and represent PETA voice their concerns, anger, and sadness over the state of our current relationship with animals in many ways. They use social media campaigns, perfectly normal. They even do protests, many of which are unbearable to witness.
If we could be the Martin Luther King for animals, why not? You know?
What? I mean, seriously, the protests are absolutely bonkers. We'll get into that in a little bit.
You could
He said,
reincarnate as
what?
any animal, what would you be?
I'd probably choose the wolf.
Well, if you were a wolf, you would be eating sheep.
Nope, I'd probably make friends with the baby lamb.
So you're saying you would be like a vegan wolf?
I'd probably be a vegan wolf.
PETA has become the largest animal rights organization in
Fucking
the
idiots.
entire world, claiming to have 9 million supporters around the globe. That is incredibly impressive. That's a lot of people. That's like half as many people as live in the 31st largest state in America. It's really not that many people. It's really not that many. You think it'd be more. Everyone knows what PETA is. Literally everybody, but there's only 9 million members? What? Or supporters? Not even members. It's maybe because they are not that good at what they do.
Well, a PETA demonstration turning heads in downtown Mobile today. The organization calling it aliens feasting on human flesh.
Before we cover the cult of PETA and some of the stories that we'll be delving into in this video in relation to PETA, it is important to discuss the leadership of PETA and how they came to be so self-righteous in their crusade to protect animals, because it always starts at the top, baby girl. Ingrid Newkirk is the co-founder and president of PETA. She seems like a nice lady, but in spite of her looking like a nice old lady type character, she's actually a kind of a bitch.
I hung from a hook in the Smitherfield's meat market with the pig carcasses.
She has a reputation for being extreme, and she claims that she's only getting more extreme with age. For example, she is quoted in this article as saying, "I'm becoming more radical with age." See, you know, right from the horse's mouth. I don't mean to say that she looks like a horse or anything like that. She doesn't look like a horse. Now, this statement that she's becoming more radical with age might be shocking, because back in 1991, she and some other activists were arrested after storming a pigeon shooting event by going out and racing onto the field and releasing pigeons from their boxes. Now, why are people shooting pigeons in boxes? I have no fucking idea. That sounds insane, but that's a radical move. And at this point, they're the good guys, because the pigeon shoot is just an event in which they got boxes, put pigeons in them, and then launch them from catapults, basically, and you just blast them with shotguns. That's not really hunting. That's just shooting things, shooting catapults. So yeah, it's pretty radical, but also pretty good guy, to be honest. So that's a small idea of who she is. Some other things to really build the full picture. She's a bit of a misanthrope. She, for example, hates children. I'm not only uninterested in having children, I'm opposed to having children. Having a purebred human baby is like having a purebred dog. It is nothing but vanity. Human vanity.
Oh, what?
What? That's crazy. Humans have grown like cancer. We're the biggest blight on the face of the earth. All right, guy from the Matrix.
I mean, kind of.
And every
yeah,
other
but
evil villain that you could possibly imagine in the most cartoonishly evil ways.
But yours may have laser eyes, but mine breathes.
What the f? That's not a great look. You can tell it's a bit radical. Misanthropy is a thing that animal rights people really like. They like it a lot. They hate humans for some reason. A lot of them do. I'm team people. I love people. I like people more than animals. Is that bad? Am I not
hate
allowed
people.
to like that? Well, I guess I don't like all people more than animals. Only the people that I like. But if I just saw a random
Animals are
person
better.
and a random animal and I'd never seen them before and one of them had to be murdered, I'd probably choose the animal. Hate me, I guess. I don't really know. And then I'd ask to eat it. But the person, though, I wouldn't want the person to be eaten. Here's a few other epic quotes from Ingrid. Pet ownership is an absolutely abysmal situation brought about by human manipulation. I don't use the
Boo.
word pet. I think it's speciesist language. I prefer companion animal. What the
Speciesist.
fuck are you talking about?
Obviously you loved animals. I read that you had a dog that, you know, like my children, you grew up from birth, is it? From birth with
Yes.
a dog that was your best friend.
It seems that Ingrid and by extension PETA want animals to be left alone and just observed by humanity, completely separate from our society. They don't want any pets or companion animals or whatever. No slavery, no eating them, obviously. What are you supposed to eat if you can't eat animals? By the way, there is a lot of arguments to be made in terms of conservation and just maintaining wild populations of animals because human involvement really sort of throws a big wrench into the mix. Wolf populations have dropped historically. Wildcat populations have dropped historically. Many are endangered or threatened, and populations are decreasing in the wild. What is the reasoning? There's a lot of different reasoning. Deer have to essentially be thinned by human beings or they would go out of control. Like hunting is an actual responsible thing to do in terms of conservation. And overall, conservation is incredibly important and a necessary thing with our current society in what human beings are doing. If we just erased everyone, then it'd be fine, you know, and honestly, that's probably what we should do. But there's a lot of complexities to this, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in any way. But I will say if we were to do what PETA is essentially saying without giving a reasonable blueprint, they just want all animal life to go back being found exclusively in the wild and just make everything wild, it would be very bad. It would not end well if there was no sort of human involvement. If there was no human involvement from the beginning, it'd be fine. Obviously, that's just nature. Ecosystems are based around our ecosystems and animal populations are based around sort of humans. So I feel like I don't know what the end game is here for Peter.
Are we really doing this?
I guess for ethical treatment of animals, I'm not sure. Seems a little bit hypocritical though. And that leads us into our first epic, hypocrisy. I'm doing so much investigating right now. This is awesome.
Oh, Frank, seriously? I have such a raging clue right now. I think we better follow it.
Okay, let's follow your raging clue.
PETA loves fighting for the lives of animals. Meanwhile, killing approximately 2,000 cats and dogs every single year. In one case, they even stole a dog off a porch to just kill it.
2 years ago,
Why?
2 PETA workers took and euthanized a dog from a porch in Accomack County.
Why?
PETA called the incident a mistake.
PETA, remember, stands for People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, have published a page on their website outlining what makes the ideal animal shelter. So let's see what this is. It should be a true safe haven for lost, injured, abused, and unwanted animals. This will be very important in a moment. Facility staff and cruelty investigators should be kind, attentive, and knowledgeable. Housing for cats and dogs should be spacious, indoors or outdoors. The public should be made to feel welcome and have a little quiet space they can spend time with animals that they might adopt. Also, a shelter should make the public aware of what they're doing by working with local newspapers, the radio, etc., putting notices in stores, animal hospitals, the standard thing. So laying down those expectations for a PETA shelter, we can kind of understand how, you know, that makes sense. But how does a real PETA shelter compare to their own expectations? Well, not that good. I'm going to be honest with you. There were some crazy details revealed during an on-site visit of the PETA headquarters in my home state of Virginia, during a determinate investigation as to whether or not it could continue operating as an animal shelter. In an official document that was released to the public thanks to Pt6animals.com, we can show you this information. The location had reported itself as an animal shelter and had been inspected previously as an animal shelter, but when Dan Kovich, an investigator with the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, arrived on site, the receptionist claimed that there was no animal shelter there on the premises, which was echoed by another staff member. It was a kill shelter. The facility only had 3 rooms for animal enclosures, and they only had 3 animals at a time. One of the animals in their 3 rooms was being boarded there for a community member, and the other 2 were there because of facility operation. They belonged to an employee. The enclosures that they had were not sufficient to house the number of animals that they reported taking into custody. It's just really strange because they have their own guidelines that are publicly available for a solid animal shelter, which they don't claim to be, but were previously inspected as. In 2010, the year of that report, they reported taking in 290 animals, but only 17 or 6% of those were adopted or moved to foster homes. And 273 of the 290 were euthanized. That's 94%. And 245 of the 273 that were euthanized within the first 24 hours of their arrival, which is not good. David decided to also include a visual aid to help us understand how ridiculous this is. Statewide animal shelter dog and cat disposition 6-year history. Euthanasia, adoption, and transfer. It's about half and half. It's terrible still. PETA dog and cat disposition 6-year history. Holy shit. Seems like at a certain point they just gave up. A lot of people are upset about this whole situation because they failed to meet their guidelines very clearly, and they also weren't even open to the public, which is ridiculous. When all this went down back in 2010, that facility specifically was run by Daphna Nukminovich, who is now the senior VP of cruelty investigations. To be fair, she has a high-profile case that's very badass where 27,000 animals were confiscated from international exotic animal dealers in Texas, my home state now, I guess, from a company called US Global Exotics, and now the owner is a federal fugitive. That's pretty baller. She spoke to Dan in an attempt to make everything look less horrific, and the excuse was that many of the animals they took in were considered unadoptable by them. She also confirmed then that the facility was not open to the public and most of the adoptions were to employees. What the f does that even mean? It's a bit ironic for an organization that is against pet ownership and just mistreating animals. I assume killing them, murdering them via euthanasia is probably mistreating them. I don't know. Following this, more government documents were made available by PETA Kills Animals. They really don't like PETA, bro. These documents serve to expose the discrepancy between the amount of animals received and how many are adopted or killed from the years 1998 to 2022. The documents show that 81% of the cats and dogs that came into their facility were killed, and 6% were adopted. It's important to provide you guys with all of the main points of information from this. By the way, this isn't just some random PETA animal shelter. This is like a shelter of last resort, in which they generally, shelters of last resort, have high euthanasia sort of policies. But the problem is that they were going by an animal shelter, I assume, to get tax breaks because they're a non-for-profit. I really don't know, and that's what led to the CCF, the people who run the PETA Kills Animals website and the fucking PR firm. That led them to petition the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services to reclassify PETA as a slaughterhouse and not an animal shelter, because they themselves admit that they kill a majority of the animals. Probably more animals than the average slaughterhouse, to be honest, which is so dumb, dude. 97.4%. They love killing animals. Now, it is incredibly important to note that PETAKillsAnimals.com, the people who are exposing all of this, is owned and operated or run by Berman & Co., a PR firm run by Rick Berman. According to sourcewatch.org, Berman & Co. operates dozens of attack dog websites similar to this one. In the now deleted section of the PETA Kills the Animals website, which can still be accessed using the Wayback Machine, you can see that it is a project by the Center for Consumer Freedom. The Center for Consumer Freedom is a nonprofit owned and operated by Berman & Co. Berman & Co. has also lobbied in the past for the food industry and tobacco industries. Some of the places that they've lobbied for include Cracker Barrel, Hooters, the International House of Pancakes, Outback, Red Lobster, and more, including Wendy's. So, bit of a bias, maybe, but it doesn't necessarily disprove any of it. It's just important to note that it's political. This whole thing is political. No one really cares about animals. Like, it really, that's what it seems like. Seems like nobody actually gives a fuck Except for me. Sourcewatch.org, by the way, details this entire situation, and you can find it easily with a search. We might link it below. Probably will forget. All this has been found mostly factual by a media bias fact check, because there hasn't really been any false information found in the reporting, but it's typically very one-sided. You can't always win. It's weird. It's political. The PETA shit sucks. At the same time, these guys are very clearly have an agenda, and that is to make you eat square hamburger patties from Wendy's or some shit. I don't fucking know.
Where's the beef?
So the motivation behind PETA kills animals isn't exactly clear. It's a little bit questionable, but it doesn't change the fact that it's true. It's true information, and it is in regard to PETA's business practices and their hypocritical acts or whatever, and their hypocrisy. To really kind of double down though on the insanity that is PETA. PETA employees have stolen pets off of people's porches, and with that broken the law to just kill the pet.
PETA called the incident a mistake.
Back in 2014, a family had their lives turned upside down when their pet chihuahua Maya was grabbed off their porch by PETA staff and taken away to the fucking seventh circle of hell or something.
The owner of the dog even has footage of a PETA van pulling up in front of his house and a woman leaving seconds later with something in her arm.
Imagine that. An animal activist comes and grabs you. You're a dog. You're like, I'm finally free! And then they just kill you. That doesn't make any sense. The family had a camera on their porch, and they caught video of the PETA van backing up, an employee going onto the porch, grabbing the animal and loading her into the back of the van. 2 days after this, PETA arrived back at the house with a fruit basket and the news that Maya was dead.
Wilbur says the woman from PETA came back to his house 2 days later with a gift and terrible news.
They bring a bucket to fruits and
fruit basket.
Yeah, fruit basket.
Maya had allegedly been euthanized.
Maya was killed hours after the original event, which is a violation of state law, which requires a grace period of 5 days, and they were somehow fined $500 for this. I don't fucking know how that works. The group later said it would pay the family $49,000 and donate $2,000 to a local branch of the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals to honor Maya. The family had sought up to $7 million. Just in case you didn't think that was enough, they did receive an official apology from PETA. That is crazy. Talk about being your own worst fucking enemy when it comes to PR. Holy shit. Both parties said in a joint statement, PETA again apologizes and expresses its regret to the Zarate family for the loss of their dog Maya. Mr. Zarate acknowledges that this was an unfortunate mistake by PETA and the individuals involved, with no ill will towards the Zarate family. How did it just go off? How did it just... dude, if someone took Frankie off my porch and killed her, I would people in that video. And I would, obviously, I wouldn't, and by God, I think anyone can agree that stealing a dog off someone's porch is detestable, especially when you break the law by putting the dog down hours later instead of waiting the 5 days you're required to wait. Why the PETA's just killing dogs every 5 days and not caring and just being fined $500? I don't understand that at all. Somehow they got off lightly with this, with the lawyers laying it on thick of there being an unfortunate mistake, there being no ill will. Dude, that seems like as about as ill will as you can get. That seems bathed in spite and evil. There was a camera capturing. If there was no camera, they would have just thought their dog was lost. Kind of put the nail in the coffin. Allegedly, a whistleblower back in 2015 revealed that this kind of behavior was encouraged by PETA and more. This is all alleged because it supposedly happened 15 years before she made the claims, which were already 9 years old now. So that's like 200 or 300 years at this point. That's a long time. Whistleblower. PETA ex-employee alleges she was encouraged to steal and kill pets to falsify records. This woman named Heather Harper Troge claims that she was told to steal, kill, and falsify records by none other than Ingrid Newkirk, the co-founder and CEO of PETA. How much money did she make, by the way? PETA made $82 million last year. What the f? Our president, Ingrid Newkirk, earned $35,000 during the past fiscal year. Not that much money in saving animals, it seems like. How do they spend $80 million a year?
Can we do Pratt next year?
Oh, in this family, we roast.
Yeah.
Right. Here we go.
Bruh. It's important also to recognize here that the things that Heather had to say combine two big things that we've already talked about. two things that 100% have happened. PETA likes killing animals instead of finding them homes, and PETA steals the animals and kills them. During her time working for PETA, Heather said that their objective was to get as many animals as possible, and the vast majority of those are killed.
The objective of the program was to get as many animals as possible, and the vast majority of those animals were killed.
She was instructed to say whatever she needed to say to gain custody of an animal, even if it meant lying to pet owners who thought they were giving PETA their pets under the guise of rehoming them, just to murder them.
I was told to pretty much say anything I needed to say in order to gain custody for an animal, or of an animal. People would call us and say that they want to surrender their animals for the purposes of rehoming. And in that situation, you would say to them, absolutely, I'll come pick up the animal, we'll do our very best to rehome this animal. Knowing full well the animal was not going to be rehomed, the animal was going to be killed.
She even claims she was told this by Ingrid Newkirk herself.
And I was told to lie by my direct supervisors initially, and then by Ingrid once I began to work more directly with her. And even when my direct supervisors told me to lie, they told me that it came straight from Ingrid, and eventually, yeah, I heard that straight from her mouth.
This is the account of one woman, and it is insanely disturbing if it's true, but considering what we've already covered in this video up until this point, sort of seamlessly intertwines itself with the first two stories. I believe it. I'm inclined to believe it. I think that's probably true. To be honest, if I had to say, that seems like something PETA would absolutely do. But PETA, they don't agree. They responded with accusations in an attempt to discredit her by calling her a disgruntled ex-employee, and that these were hateful fantasies, and it was Heather trying to exact revenge for her dismissal. And they're just a bunch of nonsense that they just say and stuff. Spay neuter surgeries and stuff.
We love spay neutering animals. We love it.
Now, on top of Heather coming forward, another employee who came forward in 2019 by the name of Laura Lee Cascada, she put up an article titled, "When the Crusade for Animals Falls Victim to Oppression." What the hell's that mean? And this is a bit of an interesting twist on everything we've covered so far. She says that she's not anti-PETA. In the page, in her article, she makes it clear that she is not anti-PETA. She's not opposed to PETA's euthanasia strategy. She is only opposed to PETA becoming the oppressor that they sought to dismantle. This is not anti-PETA commentary. I'm not opposed to PETA's stance on euthanasia. In principle, I understand the math. There aren't enough homes. Laura starts telling a story about an abandoned kitten she retrieved from a woman. Then is revealed the extent of the brainwashing of the PETA staff. The euthanasia brainwashing, which just is mind-boggling to me. Why not spend that $80 million you guys revenue a year instead of going on grassroots campaigns? Why not just save animals' lives? Find them homes and stuff. Why not pay people to adopt animals instead of making you charge? Why not just pay people to adopt them? Why not give people subsidies from your $80 million a year to help these animals, if that's actually what you want to do, instead of just murdering all of them and then going on grassroots campaigns and moaning and trying to get people to change? That seems like it might have more of an effect positively on animals overall, maybe. But maybe not, though. I don't know what I'm talking about. And during my tenure on the local, I responded to a call from a concerned woman who'd found an abandoned days-old kitten under her porch. When I came to pick up the kitten, I had her sign a generic give-up form that spelled out that euthanasia was a possibility. But I was instructed to repeatedly convey that we would do our absolute best, and so that's what I said, even as the woman described her careful search for an organization she knew would work around the clock to help this tiny being pull through. It was my job to make sure I did not leave without the cat, that I said whatever necessary for the woman to not change her mind. The entire way back to PETA's Norfolk, Virginia headquarters, I sobbed, petting the infant cat in my lap, telling her things would be all okay, even though in my gut I knew it wouldn't, that she never really had a chance. Hey bro, give me the cat. I'll take it. You know what I won't do with it? Kill it. What is wrong with PETA? I even began plotting out how I might take a detour and deliver her to a rehabber instead. Yeah, because rehabbers do more good than your fucking organization. But how could I explain a missing kitten to the woman waiting with a needle? I couldn't, so I complied without a word. How the can they kill so many animals and just be okay with it? That's crazy. A lot of brainwashing going on here, it seems like. Very cult-like behavior. Very odd, very odd. At PETA, we are told that euthanasia is often our best bet. Euthanasia is the happy ending for many animals. Humans created the problem, and PETA is cleaning up their messes. As someone who has seen the devastating effects of the massive overpopulation problem, I grasp that to my core. PETA went one step further. It made sure that employees not only understood this concept, but that it was also embedded into our operating principles. All employees are carefully groomed through issues training. They are ensured they have fully adopted the us versus them mentality. People who support every single euthanasia decision the organization makes at all times versus everyone else. That is mind-bogglingly insane. One thing I noticed that I found interesting as well from Laura's article is that she's always using the term tribe. Speaking up means you could be booted from the tribe. It's like a fucking cult. You're not allowed to think differently. It's a tribe. It's us versus them. She said it herself. So behind the scenes, it seems like a cult. In the public eye, it gets even worse. The ways that they behave are bizarre. The crazy antics of PETA never stop. Back to Laura's article for just a second. It was titled "Calling PETA's Mission a Crusade." You're all familiar with crusades. Most of them are religious in nature. In fact, all of them are. All the really well-known ones, except for the PETA crusade. That word ties in very well with the fact that PETA oftentimes comes across as religious zealots. They spew their message with no care for how digestible it is or for how sympathetic their cause may be. For example, not everyone wants to just kill animals. People like having pets and they don't want them to die. So like that's, I understand, they're like, it's a broader stroke. They're trying to fix here. Humanity's created a problem and they're trying to solve the problem. Maybe you could have like a secondary business in that doesn't kill animals. Maybe. Just an idea though, I don't know. PETA often protests through grassroots movements that they spend $30 million a year organizing somehow, and usually it is to the annoyance of the general public. These are the very people that they seek to convert to their ideology, their religion, their cult, their beliefs, their tenets. I don't know. One of PETA's favorite places to protest is everyone's favorite place for a nice, delicious, disgusting cup of coffee. That's Starbucks.
Today, a group of protesters took a stance outside the Starbucks on West End Avenue. It was all about vegan milk.
Save the planet! Save the cows! And the vegan upcharge now!
This was the scene outside Starbucks on West End Thursday morning.
They've protested there on many occasions. For example, they protested the upcharge for vegan milks by cementing their feet in the entrance of a Starbucks parking lot.
Protesters with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals were quite literally cemented outside the Mack Avenue location.
They want the company to stop upcharging for non-dairy milk.
That's hella dangerous, isn't it?
Fucking dumb, but also epic. They're really worked up over a 70-cent upcharge to alternative milk options.
That's why we charge you up to 90 cents extra for our vegan milk. Because when you really care, like you do, it's a small price to pay.
Valid, fair, I guess. But it's more expensive to make. There's less infrastructure to create, and also it's not good for the environment and just really bad for you. Pretty much all milk is just really bad for you, except for macadamia nut milk. It's about the healthiest of all the nut milks and the most environmentally sound. Actually, I don't know. I haven't done any research on that. They like to dress up like cows too and chain themselves to the entrances of Starbucks. Dress up like cows while protesting milk. It's like kind of a fetish thing that they like to do.
Gabori's house. He is the chief sustainability officer at Starbucks, and we're telling him to live up to the values that he claims to believe and claims to follow as their sustainability officer.
Scary, scary, go vegan, go vegan. Very cult-like, isn't it? And they got their little bloody milk jugs. This is what your $30 million a year is going towards. And then they got this dope-ass thing. Bro, I would love to have this. I would hang this up in front of my house. Be great. Even this dweeb, James Cromwell, a fairly recognizable actor. I can't remember what he's been in.
You just keep caring about saving the world, and we'll keep caring about our savings account. Because Starbucks cares about money.
But I know his face for sure. He joined the PETA Starbucks protests. He glued himself to a Starbucks countertop like a activist or whatever. I don't know, dude.
When will you stop charging us more for vegan milk? When will you stop raking in huge profits while customers, animals, and the environment suffer?
He was in The Longest Yard and Succession. That's where I know him from. Succession, he's the brother. Good show, by the way. There was also time for a nice photo op outside, but he put his hands on the window. Oh, this is so funny. The comments for the TikTok are really bad, man. They're really bad. Protesting capitalism at a Starbucks is peak comedy. Imagine thinking it's Starbucks that dictates the cost difference of vegan milk. Just look at price points in your grocery store. Yeah, it makes no sense. It seems like they mean well, they have a good cause, but it's just like the way that they go about with their action plans, it just doesn't really make a single cent of logical sense. It's makes no sense. It's crazy. PETA has also accused Starbucks of killing polar bears somehow. I don't understand. That's another protest for vegan milk upcharges. Of all the things you could protest and battle. Paying less for vegan milk is their hill that they want to die on, it seems. At least that's the one that comes to mind in the popular culture zeitgeist that we always see. Hey, I got an idea though. Pete, all the money you spend protesting milk, spend it not killing animals. Probably a greater good that you're getting done there. There are so many clips of them protesting milk, the dairy industry. They don't just protest dairy at the expense of too expensive alternative milk. They also protest alternative milk. For example, the time they protested buying coconut milk sourced from Thailand at Whole Foods because of forced monkey labor. That's crazy that's a thing. I cannot believe that shit. I remember seeing this on TikTok. Non-Thai milk! Forced monkey labor! Forced monkey labor! Dude, if I could make sour boys made with forced monkey labor, I would. Just kidding, I would never do that. One lady leading the monkey chants got carried out into a police van by 4 officers.
Money is not an excuse for animal abuse! Profit is not an excuse for animal abuse!
Nobody really seems to be listening. They're just people screaming. It's just performative activism, narcissistic activism. I don't really know what you would want to call it, but it doesn't really seem to be doing any good at all in any way. It's just like the Just Stop Oil protest people, where it's just obnoxious, self-righteous people throwing soup and shit on fucking paintings and whatnot.
What is worth more? Art or life? Is it worth more than food? Worth more than justice?
It's just a bad look, man. It's a bad look. Why are you doing that? Causing a scene. It doesn't do any good. Nothing makes me want to drive my truck more than soup on a Mona Lisa or something, you know? By the way, PETA has also made a video game called Kitten Squad, where you're a cat that fights robots and also defends animals. There's not a lot of euthanasia in it though, unfortunately, which I thought there would be.
The bird in the middle acts as a tutorial who also gives fun animal facts, mostly about animal abuse, such as lamb's testicles getting removed.
The reviews are pretty bad. 52% positive. This guy said, I'm going to eat hamburger now. Absurd. It's pretty crazy. You know, they got the game, they got their interesting monkey labor protests. We take it back to the top. This is potentially the strangest thing in regard to PETA, and that is Ingrid Newkirk's will. You can read all about this on the PETA website, and this is what will be done with her body after she dies. They will be sending one of her eyes to the NIH and the other to the UK Home Office for wasting time and taxpayer money on animal experiments. They will carve out and sear some of her flesh to fry up with onions for a human barbecue. They will peel off and cure her skin to fashion into a leather belt and purse. They will use her intestines for sausage casings and send them to Salt Bay. They will use her foot to fashion a human umbrella stand. They will break then display her leg at the Kentucky Derby or the Grand. Now we get to their social media, which is another level of cringe and pointless virtue signaling that will result in people just hating you more. They have a video about eating chicken making your kid's penis small. They even tried to further their anti-milk campaign by saying milk is a symbol for white supremacy, which is crazy. So let's talk about their links to the T-word, just in general, because that's right. There are links between PETA and the T-word. More specifically, their affiliation with 2 groups, the Earth Liberation Front and the Animal Liberation Front, both extremist rights organizations that have committed multiple acts of arson and even bombings. According to the Department of Homeland Security, one of my least favorite 3-letter organizations that is run by the United States government, between 1995 and 2010, there were 239 instances of arson and bombings from these groups, 45% of them being from the ALF. Even the FBI Deputy Assistant Director in 2004, a fellow named John E. Lewis, talks about how these groups had emerged as a serious domestic threat to the people living in the United States. And these 2 groups were among the most active extremist elements in the United States. Now, how does PETA come into all this? Well, back in 1993, there was a firebombing at a laboratory at Michigan State University, which was perpetrated by a fella named Rodney Coronado, a member of the Animal Liberation Front. This man pled guilty to his firebombing and spent nearly 5 years in prison, but before his trial, PETA donated a $45,000 support fund to him and gave Rodney's father a $25,000 loan after the bombing but before his capture. Huh? That's weird. And a copy of Rodney's sentencing memorandum reveals more. PETA announced that they were acting as a media conduit for the ALF during this time and stated that the ALF took its actions in order to end MSU's animal research. According to the ALF and PETA press release, the primary target of the ALF's attack at MSU was Dr. Richard Ulrich. Further into the document, there is a more sinister link to that crazy Ingrid. We can find this is so insane. Investigators learned that immediately before and after the MSU arson, a Federal Express package had been sent to Bethesda, Maryland address from an individual identifying himself as
saving
Leonard
best for
Robideau.
last.
The first package went to Ingrid Newkirk.
This will
Peter's
probably be the
felony.
last,
The second package contained documents that had been stolen from Dr.
last
Ulrich
piece I
during
do
the
before I
MSU
do
raid.
yours.
The first warrant was executed at the home of Maria Blanton, a longtime PETA member who had agreed to accept the first Federal Express package from Coronado after being asked to do so by Ingrid Newkirk. These records showed that Coronado, Alex Pacheco, another PETA founder, and others had planned a burglary at Tulane University's Primate Research Center in 1990. So it seems like PETA might have started as not like a charity or like a foundation to help animals, and more so a organization. I don't really fucking know, to be honest. One thing's for sure is they don't help a lot of animals. They kill a lot of animals, so that makes sense. The roots sort of add up there. Times have changed. Obviously, this was 1993. Back in the 90s, things were different. All right, Austin Powers was around and stuff. Now, we don't have Austin Powers. We've got PETA, and they make $80 million a year bitching and moaning about milk, and also euthanizing 94% of the animals that come into their shelters. And also, let's not forget about stealing people's animals as well and killing them before the 5-day period to only be fined $500. That's crazy. Now they have a page on their website clarifying their stance on the ALF. They refuse to condemn their illegal actions so long as no sentient being is being harmed. And then Ingrid Newkirk said, I will be the last person to condemn the ALF. Wow, that's crazy. The thing that PETA does is devalue actual real things that are going on within humanity. It's very vegan teacher-esque.
Speciesism is a disease.
Comparing animals dying and being eaten to a Holocaust on your plate. Comparing animals being pets and used for things as, you know, actual real slavery, human slavery. They also had an advertising campaign that linked milk with autism. They also linked the KKK to the AKC, the American Kennel Club, because it's about pure bloodlines, which is fucking absurd.
I'm sorry, sir. I think you have the wrong meeting.
Oh, is this the American Kennel Club?
Yes, but, you know, we're discussing...
And you believe in the sanctity of pure bloodlines, right?
Yes.
And breeding to achieve a master race?
Well, master pedigree. They're
race pedigree. I mean, that's just all semantics.
They hated Steve Irwin, which that alone is enough to make me not like them, and many, many, many more terrible things. In conclusion, PETA might ultimately mean well with their goal of pursuing animal freedoms. Realistically speaking, they're not going to get a large swath of the general population to be supporters. Somehow they make $80 million a year. I don't understand that. I just don't understand PETA. Like, I don't want to go to circuses. I don't like SeaWorld. I don't want animals to be euthanized either by animal shelters, and there's probably going to be something soon, hopefully, that comes in and makes a bigger difference than PETA, and is also something that can be celebrated by both sides of the aisle, not just the extreme literal terrorist associated side that I don't want to be associated with at all. PETA's not good. I don't like PETA, but I do love PETA bread. And Peter Griffin.
Somebody better have something to say to me pretty damn soon, or I'm gonna have something to say to them. I am very busy.
I think Betty White is in PETA.
That doesn't even make any sense!
Crime, conspiracy, cults, murder, and you. All of which are my favorite topics to talk about. That's a little weird. Anyway, let's start off with you look absolutely fabulous today, all snuggled up. Or maybe you're not, but get snuggled up, because we're going to talk about some not so snuggly topics. We're talking about cults today. I put a vote up on Instagram, and I wanted you guys to tell me whether you wanted serial killers or cults, and y'all said cults, which I was excited about, because I feel like a lot of people focus a lot on serial killers for these deep dives, and I'm excited to dive into this cult because I don't think it's talked about enough. I was gonna go the Jim Jones route, which I might do in the future, and I was thinking maybe Charles Manson, but that feels overdone, so we're gonna do the Children of God. And it sounds nice, but it's not. The main cult leader in charge, David Berg, is the biggest POS you have ever heard of in your life, and I'm excited to deep dive into this. I'm very interested in how cult leaders come to be and how they get these people to follow them and everything. So let's unbuckle our seatbelts, go Mach 5 down the highway, slam on the brakes, and deep dive through this windshield together. Alright, so for those of you who don't know, the Children of God, otherwise known now as the Family International, is a far-reaching Christian cult that started in the late 60s by David Berg. This Santa Claus looking perverted but it's always the 60s, isn't it? Something about that time just is terrible. But it also had its ups. Some trippy hippies, Elvis Presley, the invention of the handheld calculator, and international criminal sex cults. That's the not so good part, but that's what we're going to talk about today. Now you may ask, why, Chris? Why are we diving into this particular sex cult? And it's because over the years, this cult has become involved in a plethora of sex scandals involving, but not limited to, religious prostitution, child abuse, and pedophilia. But they have now reformed, whatever that means, and are known to be somewhat of a reformed Christian church now. But I'm not going to take their word for it. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to be diving deep into the very beginnings of this cult and its leader, David Berg, and all the scandal and abuse and crimes that lied within. So, David Berg was born on February 18th, 1919, in Oakland, California. But during his early years, he lived in Florida. So we're already starting off on a bad note, okay? He was born in a place where people signed contracts to El Diablo, and then he was raised in Florida, where, well, it's Florida, you know. Anyway, he was the youngest of 3 children, born to Virginia Brandt, his mother, and Hilmer Berg, he's Swedish, can you believe it, his father. And to really understand David Berg, I need to tell you about his POS parents, Hilmer and Virginia. Let's start with his mother. So David's mother, Virginia Brandt, was a radio evangelist and a traveling preacher during the Pentecostal revival, which was a time big on fire and brimstone, and for those of you who don't know what that means, it's a term used to represent God's wrath in Christian tradition. Pretty metal. Along with speaking in tongues and laying of hands, etc., what most people would consider old-time religion practices. And David's mother got hooked into religion from an event that happened when she was a teenager, where she got whipped off a horse and buggy and broke her back. And then she was bedridden for 5 whole years. But then one day, the heavens opened up and she rose from the bed like the Exorcist.
It's the power.
And she was just miraculously able to walk from then on. And from then on, she was known as the Miracle Woman, telling her tale of divine healing, something of which other cult leaders such as Jim Jones used to preach and claim as well. So from that tale on, she would grow up and become the first female evangelist preacher in America, and would go on to host a radio show called Meditation Moments, something I feel like I had to do several times while researching for this video. But isn't that just like a nice story? Something that gives you hope in life for humanity. Just miracles happening on their own like that. That's pretty great. Spoiler alert! It was all bullshit. It was fake. Can you believe it? A religious leader trying to exploit people for money and fame and favors? I've never heard of such a thing. But disclaimer, no hate to anybody that is religious, okay? I know plenty of people that are religious, and they're some of the best people I know, including my family, alright? But let's not pretend there aren't some slimy scumbags that use and abuse it for evil, okay? I digress. Let's continue. So like I was saying, all David Berg's mother's claims were found out to be horse shit, because years later, one of David Berg's daughters would reveal that the entire time she claimed to be bedridden for 5 years, she was actually at the Texas Christian University in Texas, healthy as a horse. So all this goes to show that blatantly lying to use and abuse innocent, vulnerable people for gain was already in David Berg's DNA. But wait, there's more! David Berg's father, Hilmer Berg, I really hope I'm saying that right, it's really fun to say, a poor Swedish immigrant who before coming to America made money performing musical numbers and acrobatic routines in a wandering minstrel show. Minstrel show? I definitely spelled it wrong. I said menstrual show, but I feel like that's wrong. He was like a Swedish hippie, which wasn't bad necessarily, but just added a little bit to the David Berg cult leader stew that we're cooking. Having a mother who already practiced scamming people through religion, and a father who was just like a naive hippie drifter, along with the fact that David Berg was growing up in a time where new religion, conspiracy, and cults were absolutely rampant. It was just a recipe for disaster. So after David was born, the Bergs threw themselves into the Pentecostal church. And for those of you who don't know, those are like the snake handlers, the faith healers, the tongue speakers. These are the people that, in my opinion, the Lord would claim went hard to the paint. And by paint, I mean huffing it. This type of religion and these type of people were basically just dramatic theatrical performances put on for every sermon that happened, which is pretty fun, you know, if you're not hurting anybody. I don't know. But for those of you who don't know, the only way I can describe it is what looks and sounds like a bunch of severely intoxicated adults in a reptile terrarium who think they have superhuman powers. So pretty baller. So David's parents became a big part of the church, whether they were preaching or in charge or music directing, etc. And this church grew rapidly over a very short period of time. Within a year, it went from 12 members to filling up an auditorium of over 4,500 members. And this is when David claims to remember less about the church and more about his mother scolding him about touching himself constantly. This guy was horny from the start. And I'm talking, he's like 5 right now, by the way, like 5. And I know like kids do that, but he was like doing it, you know what I mean? Which is strange. Anyway, one night, Virginia, his mother, caught him touching himself and then gathered the entire family into one room, and she grabbed a bowl and a knife. Do you see where this is going? I didn't. And then proceeded to tell David,
hey, if you do that again, I'm gonna take this bowl, put it under your and then chop it off in front of the entire family, okay?
But I thought my mom was scary when she called family meetings, man. Can you imagine your mom just calling you like,
sweetie, you gotta come downstairs for a family meeting. We need to talk about how you stuck out last night.
And you don't know whether you're gonna go downstairs and get grounded or get your legs lobbed off by your entire family? What a great parenting tip. Virginia's solid. Virginia should write a book, in my opinion. She's dead now, though, so thank God. But alas, David did not stop touching himself, which we know because I'm making this video. Looking back on this time, he said, quote unquote, "It just felt too good to quit." How horny do you have to be to risk getting your cut off in front of your entire family? Like, it's crazy to me, dude. Anyway, this is clearly the obvious beginning of the up sex cult leader picture being painted. He would also claim that his Mexican babysitter Maria used to quote unquote suck me to sleep before my nap every afternoon. What? This is unconfirmed. This is his claim, but I hope to God it's not true, but I think it might be because he did use it as an excuse in the future to children in an act of calming them down, and he would get other members of his cult to do the same to their children to calm them down as well. How about just giving them a shot of whiskey like all our moms did, you know? It's just mine? Oh. And I know I'm like speaking very, you know, in a funny way, and as I think this person is the fucking scum of the earth, and I hope that he's just burning in hell right now. So I just want you to know this entire time I have all the sympathy for these victims, and I fucking hate David Berg. Let's just make that very clear. But on a more serious note, his daughter even spoke about these acts as an adult, like plain as day, saying her father, David Berg, used to put her to sleep by giving her a front rub-in, which is just heartbreaking, you know? And it's even more sad because everybody that talks in these interviews that I watched that were a part of this and that were okay with it or grew up in the cult just thought it was completely normal, and they didn't really know that they were getting taken advantage of. So it's just so fucking sad, man. And I hope all the people that participated in this are just burning, you know? So anyway, so it all really started with his family and then eventually branched out into the cult, but we will get to that. So obviously David's obsession with sex started at a very young age and was only amplified by the fact that David's mother chastised him for having any sexual thoughts at all or committing any self-inflicted sexual acts on himself, because he was caught again later in life when he was a teenager and didn't get his cut off, unfortunately. That would have solved a lot of problems looking back right now. We wouldn't be making a video. I wish she would have held up to her threat, but alas, she did not. Instead, she made Hilmerberg, his father, come in mid-stroke, and she made David finish in front of her and his father. So, a family that jerks together stays together. Don't pause that. That's gross. I'm kidding. But what the f? But you can slowly start to see that the punishments that his mother inflicted on him slowly became David's fetishes later on in life. Because you know that old saying, if you tell someone not to touch wet paint, they're gonna in front of their family. But anyway, this rebellious behavior towards sex and punishments just somewhat normalized the breaking down of any sexual barriers that were in place at all, if any, at all, with his family, and just basically taught him that any sexual activity was a-okay with the fam jam. Thanks, Mom and Dad. I'll go myself. Literally. And those boundaries would be dropped, allegedly, based on a letter later in life that David Berg wrote about his mother, accounting a night him and his mother got stuck in a cold, cold house on a cold, cold winter night, in which she was naked and spooned him from behind, and he regretted deeply that he did not make sweet, sweet love to his mother. And I would like to believe that his mother had no intention of doing that, but I'm gonna safely assume she might have. I don't really know. Either way, this is just catapulting him into the weird f***ing mindset